face and a number of things we have to do. These recent storms have had a real impact. We've got dam spillways eroding, we've got roads crumbling, we have our aging infrastructure and it's maxed out. What's required is to take some immediate action, which we're doing, and then over the longer term, we have to invest billions of dollars in California infrastructure. It used to be called public works, and there's a lot of public work to be done here in California, in fact, throughout the entire country. Let me just start over here with the problem that we're facing. The needs of infrastructure, about 187 billion in unmet needs that we've got to face. That's 50 billion for flood management, flood control management, 59 billion deferred highway maintenance, and then we have 78 billion in local streets and roads. So this is a big number, 200 billion. And I might add to that, you put in the pension liabilities, state and local, you can add another 200 or 300 billion. So there's real work to be done, and even though there's all sorts of other needs that are also insisted, the basic core of what government's about has to focus, number one, on the basic infrastructure that allows our state to function. Now, over here, we've got there are four main points I want to mention. First of all, we've got to take care of flood control and emergency response. That's a total of 387 billion. We put 50 million right out of the state general fund. The second thing I want to do is require action plans and flood inundation maps. Inundation maps are the ones that describe where the evacuation what it has to include. And the action plans are actually what do you do when you have a problem. Now we have these things, but we've got to expand them. We've got to make them better. Next, we want to expand our existing dam inspection program, which we do inspect all the dams, but the state only owns about 3% of them. And we want to make sure in our annual inspections we take into account more recent scientific modeling and more recent knowledge of geologic hazards. And then finally, I want to seek regulatory relief at the federal level and funding. And to that end, I'm sending a request to the President to streamline the environmental review at the Oroville Dam project, and I'm listing 10 urgent areas that need environmental review. And this is part of the 50 projects that we've asked to be considered for funding in response to an earlier request for proposals out of Washington. So we have the flood control, we have the dams, and those kind of things. And then secondly, we have to deal with the transportation, and in that sense, we also have a deadline or a goal to get our transportation funding plans out of the legislature by April 6th. And that's a tall order, but we're going to do it. So any other questions? Any questions at all, I'd be glad to take.
Governor, given the state's sort of resistance position to the Trump administration, are you concerned that that's going to affect the possibility that we'll get federal money for infrastructure here in California?
Well, you just stated a fact that there are many policies in Washington that many people in California don't agree with, myself included. However, we are inextricably linked to the federal government. The President and the Congress, although they may be under a different party, we are linked together as part of American Protect California's 12%. So we have to, I think, walk a very thoughtful line here, seeking help that we need, but also calling attention to those things we object to, and fighting vigorously when required.
Have you reached out to the President at all to try and mend any fences or anything?
Well, I don't think that's the appropriate move at this point. I'm sending him a letter. I asked for an emergency declaration. He responded. And instead of these more general concepts, I like to take it in very discrete, sequential steps based on the needs of the hour. And we're doing it.
Governor, in the number that you got here of unmet infrastructure needs, could you talk a little bit about how we got to this point? Is that just basically people not doing their job in elected office, or is there how did we get to where we are?
This is the way, John, this is the way the world works. The immediate takes precedence over the more fundamental. And the more fundamental is, we have to take care of flood control, we have to make sure our dams are in order, we need the roads, the maintenance, to maintain them, we have to improve them, we have to, I believe, have to build an adequate rail system, we have to do the water fix. These are big projects, and anything big today challenges the Lilliputian mind that is still operative in too many political circles. So it doesn't get done because big is often feared, and sometimes big can cause big problems. If you look at Oroville Dam today and you propose that, there'd be a hell of a lot of environmental review. In fact, this was done by my father back in the 60s. That was a different world. So I am pushing against the resistance, and we will continue to do that. But I don't think you can have a great country or a great state unless you invest tens of billions, even hundreds of billions, in the core material substratum of our whole economy.
Could I just then follow up, could you give us some sense of like how people should view the unmet need as a serious problem, a dangerous problem, a problem we just need to get now and finally buckle down and do? What's the level of concern people should have?
Well, the level is serious. So you could even, if you were a conservative, you bring up the pension liability. How serious is that? Well, it's serious. We've got to get at it. But all the other things that are here that you see floating in the legislature, they feel very urgent to many people too. So it's a matter of balancing priorities. I would say these liabilities are a serious cloud, and we have to take them seriously and do more than chip away at them. We have to make substantial investments. That's why the transportation measure, which requires more revenue, more fees, changing the law to allow local jurisdictions to have more ability to raise the funding they need. Look, we're going to have a civilization, we've got to pay for it. And there's a lot of spending we've been unwilling to. Government is not the most favored item. People are skeptical, they don't believe things can happen. You people in the media do a great job at pointing out everything that doesn't work, everything that's wrong, and all the foibles, and they're true in many respects. But we have to build enough confidence that we can get the job done. And when the roof is leaking, if you don't fix it, it'll cost more later. So yeah, it's serious, but I wouldn't panic.
So do you blame yourself in any way for neglecting infrastructure during your first
No,
term?
not at all. I have you around too. So the fact of the matter is, we do need to think the quality of life and the need for renewable energy and protecting the environment and things like that. I focused a lot on that, and this was a time in the 70s where we just got through this Vietnam War. There seemed to be a major catastrophe, real loss of confidence in the best and the brightest. We just had a president had to resign under the threat of impeachment in Watergate. So there's a lot of disbelief in the political process. So I certainly felt that skepticism. I brought it to bear on these projects. So today, with more decades passing, with more unmet needs building up, I think I certainly take a more expansive view when it comes to building and infrastructure. So if you detect a difference in the way I see the world at the age of 78, about to be 79, and 36, about to be 37, yes, there's a big difference, and I would hope so, because I've had a lot of life in between.
Governor, are you satisfied with DWR's management of the dam and the subsequent crisis handling the spillway problem?
Yes, I have to say that I had this feeling when I was being briefed. This is a world of real engineering, physical, and expert kind of understanding and knowledge. So when a generalist listens, you have to listen with a certain amount of humility, because these are not the normal political conversations that you hear in the hallways of Sacramento. This is stuff about putting a rock in the dam, and the spillway is split open, and so it go down at 50,000 cubic feet per minute, or 100,000. These are quintessentially expert kind of things. And in a democracy, that's always a tension between the general representatives of the people and the scientists and engineers and the experts. So I think, in general, we have a very expert Department of Water Resources.
Governor, do you
It's one of the best in the country, and will they be perfect? No. Am I perfect? You're not perfect. Look at the failure of the whole news industry. So we all have to kind of deal with the challenges we're dealt. We gotta play the cards that we're dealt, and yeah, you'll probably pick some issues out, and as you do, I'll respond.
Governor, if they're so expert, why did they reject the idea of armoring the auxiliary spillway
When?
10, 11, 12 years ago? I mean,
Well,
it
for
was
one thing-
proposed and was pointed out. Why did they reject it?
Who was governor then? Was that Davis or Schwarzenegger?
Schwarzenegger.
Schwarzenegger. Well, he had a lot of things in his mind. Here's the point. You folks are very good at finding some obscure document that says, oh, we knew about it. Well, you may know about it, but you got other problems. You wonder, why don't we spend our $187 billion? Well, we have all sorts of immediate issues. Affordable housing, childcare, many, many issues. So it's just that in a government as big as this, not everything will be taken care of always. And lucky for you, because you wouldn't have a damn thing to do.
Governor,
So I don't think that's very significant that an environmental group filed something. What about PG&E and their gas pipes? Everywhere you look, and the bridge, this and that, this is the way, this is what happens, and we try to correct it. We try to do the best way we can. But if we want to guard against any problem 100%, you'd have to quadruple the spending, and that wouldn't make any sense.
Governor, what's been the
President Pro Tem has proposed a $3+ billion bond for part of which would go to water. Do we need another bond to start paying for this?
Well, the trouble with bonds are the interest rates are going to go up. They cost you twice as much. Sometimes a bond can be good. I don't want to say categorically it's not a good idea. But in general, we ought to be doing more pay-as-you-go. You have a problem, is it real? You got to pay for it. What does pay for it mean? You got to raise funding. Politically, we're in a world where opposing government and government spending is very popular. But we still have the fact that the public works are needed. So, yeah, I like the idea of pay-as-you-go. We didn't have any bonds to build roads when my father was governor. We did a hell of a lot. So we didn't put bonds so much, I don't think, in education. So we gotta belly up to the bar and start spending money. Now, will the people reject that? In many cases they will, but we gotta keep at it and try to win a constituency to take care of business if we want to great California in the decades to come.
Governor.
If I may, the congressman from Waterville and a bunch of other Republicans signed a letter urging that President Trump free up federal funding for this. Would this have happened if they had not done that letter?
Say that again?
LaMalfa and other members, Republicans in Congress,
Yeah.
signed a letter urging the president to free up emergency funding for Oroville.
Yeah.
Would it have happened if they had not written that letter?
Well, politics is a reaction to striking events. If we didn't have all this flooding, we wouldn't be here today. This is the way news works, right? It's man bites dog, not the reverse. So events, all the different things to create news. So they're responding, but the real question is not to release emergency funds, but to raise taxes and revenue to have emergency funds. And that's where I think the Congress is going to be very challenged, because it's always easy to borrow. But a bond is ultimately a tax, a deferred tax. So I think we need the proper balance between putting the burden on the next generation and facing up to the fact that we have to take more of our private capital and put it into public spending.
Governor, what's been the response to your request to the federal government?
We just sent it out this morning, so I'll let you know as soon as we get a response. If it's, I hope it'll be as fast as the emergency declaration. That was very impressive.
So Governor, you're working on a plan for the roads, that's been going on for a while. What is the plan to find money for the water infrastructure at this point?
Well, we have the proposition, we have the water bond.
You have some money for that, but that's $437 million as opposed to $50 billion that we're talking about over here. How do you get to that? How do you want to get to that bigger
You
number?
will not get the full answer this morning, because we didn't get here without a lot of factors coming into play. So we listed here because I want to create the context that this is not an isolated set of problems. It's part of a larger a larger picture of a state with 40 million people having to deal with the impacts of a modern civilization. And despite what you hear from many conservatives, there has to be a very healthy public expenditure based on taxes. And that is very unpopular, and usually I would never even use the word taxes when I'd be running for office. I call them revenues. But you have to face up to it, and it's pretty darn important.
And do you think there should be new taxes to pay for these things involving water?
Well, you have to get money. This is not a magic trick here that we just hocus pocus. A lot of politics is hocus pocus because the people don't want to spend the money, and you want to get reelected, you don't want to push it into their face. But somehow, we have to bring these urgent needs to public attention. You know, to remember, and I'm going to give you a Jerry Brownism here. If you want to look at how things worked for 20,000 years in California, there were 300,000 people living pretty lightly, without cars and power plants and all the rest of the stuff. That worked for 20,000 years. Ours has worked for a relatively brief period. And if we want to make it sustainable for a long period of time, we have to make it more elegant, more efficient, more environmental friendly. And that is going to take a lot of money.
And the last question is, you've asked for the expedited federal environmental review from the administration. You also want them to give money for these things. As you mentioned, when you're, in how much money, do you have a specific dollar figure in mind for what you want to get from them?
Well, we have, the President Trump has talked about $1 trillion. California probably should get 12% of that, it's $120 billion. If you take it over 10 years, that's 12 billion a year. That'd be a good place to arrive. I don't know if we're gonna get there, but I'd start.
Governor, in light of the recent failures that are sort of memorialized behind you and elsewhere, a number of Californians expressed concern that we're spending millions, billions of dollars on high-speed rail as opposed to keeping up the infrastructure that we should have been maintaining. What do you say to that criticism?
Well, I say that you have to do more than one thing at a time. And meeting the needs, whether it's 5 or 10 million more people, and all the cars they're gonna have, and all the airplane rides they're gonna take. A passenger rail alternative is a very important complement to the roads, the bridges, and the airports. If you try to expand an airport, you'll know how hard it is. Having a certain amount of the traffic go by way of high-speed rail would be very good. In the valley, if some of the people who are trying to find houses in San Jose or Palo Alto could take a ride 50, 90 miles into the Central Valley, they could find a more affordable house. So the high-speed rail is part of the infrastructure. And there's lots of things we have to do. A lot of people don't like the water fix. They like to just keep the old earth and levees as our main protection. I'm giving you my best judgment. And also, the high-speed rail was voted on by the people. They put that out, and I decided to follow through on what Schwarzenegger did and what the people voted for. And I think it makes a lot of sense, particularly with climate change and the ability to have a totally electrified system depending on renewable energy. So it meets a lot of goals. It will be invested in over many years and decades.